It's no secret that the animals of our world come in all shapes and sizes, but even within single species or subspecies, sometimes nature and genetics start seeing double, resulting in something that usually seems limited to the realms of mythology: two-headed animals. From the strangely adorable to the truly nightmarish, coming up are some of the weirdest two-headed animals ever seen. It's probably not a huge surprise to learn that a creature being born with two heads instead of one, a condition known as bicephaly, is incredibly rare. Given that very few wild animals born with two heads or two faces survive long enough to be spotted by humans, it's hard to determine exactly how common bicephaly is, though very rough estimates place the figure at around 1 in 100,000 births. So how exactly do creatures end up with two noggins? Well, bicephaly usually occurs when an early embryo splits in an incomplete manner. Normally, twins form when a fertilized egg divides, producing a second embryo with the same genetic information. Occasionally, this process of division is interrupted due to temperature or chemical issues, resulting in an embryo which is only partially divided. The two embryos develop physically connected, sometimes at the head, sometimes at the face, and sometimes at the body. Often once they develop, these two-faced animals share one or several internal organs, occasionally even the brain, and sadly, though unsurprisingly, upwards of 60% are stillborn or die shortly after birth. Even if their shared organs all function correctly, seeing as bicephalic animals usually have two brains in their heads, each brain often only has access to certain limbs, which, as you can imagine, is pretty problematic. Though the extent to how much control each brain has varies in each case, the constant struggle to coordinate limbs and move together in a straight line leaves them unable to effectively find food and vulnerable to predators in the wild. Even more tricky is the fact that with some two-headed animals, both brains actually have full control, meaning their muscles are constantly receiving mixed signals simultaneously, making coordinated movement almost impossible. It's not exactly an easy existence, but now that we know how these odd creatures exist, let's check out what life is like for some of the strangest specimens, shall we? One two-headed creature that's not to be snorted at is this little piggy with two snouts. With two mouths to feed, this pig was born on a farm in Hunan, China back in 2011. The poor porker was unable to suckle with the weight of two heads, but each brain and snout were intact enough to be fed by the bottle. Despite having trouble eating, the piglet miraculously had no health complications, and no news was subsequently reported of its untimely demise, which is always nice. However, aside the ability to enjoy the smell of freshly baked bread twice as much as the rest of us, with the bicephalic bros reportedly getting pushed around by other pigs on the farm, two heads still don't seem to work out as much of an advantage. Another pig with snouts for two was born on a farm in northwest China 4 years earlier, ironically during the year of the pig, and was taken as a lucky omen. This incredible image of the pig in front of dual mirrors really gives the full picture. Despite the cycloptic eye in the center of its head being non-functional, given that it's actually two incomplete eyes fused together, the other two eyes work just fine. That means that, yep, he's checking himself out. And with such a dashing appearance, who can blame the little guy? More recently, in May 2020, another double-headed pig was born in Iloilo in the Philippines, only this time, their split embryo had left them with 4 eyes and an ear slap bang in the middle of their shared forehead. An excited farmer nicknamed the little guys Co-Pig to bring his family luck during COVID. But sadly, the farmer's lucky charm passed away after 4 days, which seems morbidly in character for the year that was 2020. As I've hinted at already, surviving with a condition like bicephaly is incredibly rare. The partially developed split body is susceptible to almost endless connected abnormalities and complications in the cardiovascular, neural, or digestive systems, making it nearly impossible for the bodies of animals like our little pig pals to do vital jobs. For the Kopig twins, the unusual formation of their skulls obstructed the development of their brains, leaving them too weak and uncoordinated to survive. Which is, of course, very sad, but it doesn't stop them from being adorable. Some bicephalic animals come in smaller, even cuter packages. In August 2019, a tiny two-headed loggerhead turtle was found in South Carolina's Hilton Head Island beach by a group watching the year's hatchlings along the shore. For sea turtles, in general, only about 1 in 1,000 to 10,000 make it to adulthood, according to the Sea Turtle Conservancy. And sadly, these two-headed turtles couldn't swim or even move in a straight line, because their flippers were controlled by separate heads, giving them even slimmer chances. What's more, their upper shell was malformed, making it even harder to travel smoothly and stay protected. However, not long after they were found, they were released back into the ocean. So, with technically no confirmation of their demise, let's just assume they're still out there somewhere, healthily and happily swimming in circles, shall we? Judging by their behavior, you may already think cats are weird enough, but just wait till you see one of these little guys. These feline oddities are known as Janus cats, named after the Roman god with two faces. One, or two, of the world's most renowned Janus cats are a pair known as Frank and Louie, or Frankenlouie. This Janus cat had 3 eyes, 2 noses, and 2 mouths. This specific type of facial deformity, sometimes known as diprosopus, is usually caused by an incredibly rare congenital disorder called craniofacial duplication. In cases like this, there is excessive hyperactivity coming from something called the SHH gene, which commands the body to produce proteins that control how the face, brain, and skull develop. This can result in the formation of 2 faces and sometimes 2 brains on a single head. Given the non-symmetrical way Frankenlouie's face formed as an embryo, their middle eye didn't work properly, and they had just 1 functional mouth. Louie had no bottom jaw to feed properly, so Frank was in charge of the chewing and swallowing. Strangely though, despite the owners giving each face its own name, there was only 1 brain and stomach between them. This meant, thankfully, there was no fighting for control. Everything was pleasantly coordinated by a single brain. So, for a long time, Frankenlouie was in great health, even strong enough to play with other cats. While Janus cats almost never survive long because of problems developing their esophagus, making it difficult to swallow and digest food, Frankenlouie was an anomaly with no such issues, and survived far beyond the usual length of a Janus life. In 2014, Frankenlouie passed away from cancer at the age of 15, but not before copping the Guinness World title for the longest-lived Janus cat. I guess where regular cats only have 9 lives, Frankenlouie must have had 18 to keep him alive so long in spite of it all. If you're starting to get a soft spot for all things two-headed, I guarantee you've got nothing on a man named Todd Ray. Todd owns the largest collection of two-headed animals in the world, and a favorite from his Los Angeles collection was a double-domed eastern box turtle found in 2011. The 2 conjoined turtles, called Squirt and Crush, were minuscule at 6 weeks old and could barely move. Things were so bad for them that Ray considered doing something he had never done before, getting his pets surgically separated. However, their bodies were connected at the plastron, the underside of the shell, which cannot grow back once severed. So keeping them alive after the separation wouldn't be easy. But even though Ray came close to getting a vet to operate, the conjoined pair tragically died before it could go forward. R.I.P. little dudes. On a lighter note, what has 2 heads, 4 eyes, and 6 legs? A crazy-looking, living, breathing, bearded dragon, of course. In May 2010, our pal Todd Ray found a good home in his collection for this particular 2-headed reptile, which he named Poncho and Lefty. With 2 sets of front and back legs, They were able to move with relative ease, except apparently, when one wanted to sleep, the other didn't. Lefty would drag his unconscious brother in one direction to walk, and when Poncho inevitably woke up, he'd start pulling the other way. The only thing Ray wasn't ever sure about, though, was whether they had two stomachs or shared one. Having one stomach would mean, theoretically, one head could freeload off the other, since all their energy is coming from the same source. However, there was no single designated eater among the dragon twins, although they did have some disagreements over which foods were best. Poncho was known for being the aggressive cricket binge eater, while Lefty seemed happier with his veggies. But just imagine arguing with a second brain every time you wanted to grab a snack. Or, if a single shared stomach was the case, suddenly feeling full without the sensation of having eaten anything. Bizarre, right? Well, you won't be able to ask Poncho and Lefty what it's really like, as they've since passed away, but I'm glad to say, unlike many two-headed creatures, they lived a full life. Or should I say, two. Back to the barnyard now, it's time to meet Lucky from Kentucky, a two-headed calf born in 2017 to farmers Stan and Brandy McCubbin. Lucky was born with two mouths, two noses, and four eyes, the middle two of which were blind and shared a single socket. When one of Lucky's mouths moved, so did the other, suggesting there was only a single brain inside the calf's head, governing control of its movement. Just imagine how much you could eat at Thanksgiving with two mouths under your command, and how loudly you could burp afterwards. Lucky's mouths were, however, deformed by cleft palates, meaning the roof of each mouth was irregularly shaped. So she needed extra support eating, and given the shaky balance two heads will give you, Lucky needed support in general too. The farmers kept Lucky as comfortable as possible by bottle feeding her mashed up food and powdered milk 3 times a day. While most bicephalic animals only live for a couple of hours, or a few days maximum, Lucky made it to an impressive 108 days. But 10 years earlier, in 2007, another two-faced cow was born in somewhat ironic circumstances. Virginia farmer Kirk Heldreth had been utilizing selective artificial insemination to produce the best possible cow, and ended up with something wholly unexpected. When one of Heldreth's cows gave birth, his first thought was that she had just had twins. Instead, on closer inspection, he found a singular calf with 3 sets of teeth, 2 lower jaws, and 2 tongues in its mouth. While not the show-winning cow he'd expected, Kirk called his unique calf Star, fell for her sweet personality, and cared for her until she passed away 2 months later. Looks like heaven gained a new star. What? No, I'm not crying, it's just the allergies. Diving into the ocean now, this two-of-a-kind porpoise found off the coast of the Netherlands makes the three-eyed fish from The Simpsons look almost normal. The conjoined newborns were discovered by a Dutch fisherman floating in the cold waters of the North Sea in May 2017. They were 2 feet long with a shared pair of fins and a second head growing bizarrely at a right angle out of the side of its neck. Before the fisherman returned the porpoise to the ocean, he noticed its tail had never gotten a chance to stiffen for swimming. This meant the unfortunate creature would have had a real hard time moving, though it appeared to have been stillborn anyway. In an environment as unforgiving as the sea, perhaps this little swimmer's untimely demise was something of a mercy. And speaking of the dangers of the ocean, facing off with a regular shark is already an uncomfortable idea for most people. But one with 2 heads? That's just pure nightmare fuel. But weirdly enough, a surprisingly cute-seeming 2-headed baby shark was found among a fisherman's daily catch in the Indian state of Maharashtra back in 2020. The flummoxed fisherman was quick to chuck the bitey bicephalian back into the waters, but not before snagging a few photos of the rare catch. He later shared these pics with the Marine Fisheries Research Institute, who only knew of 2 other cases in the whole of India on record. Now, a bicephalic baby shark I can handle, but let's just be grateful that no full-sized 2-headed great whites or hammerheads have been lurking among the waves so far. On the topic of fearsome predators with 2 heads, have you ever wondered what 2 heads would look like on a grizzly bear? I think you'll agree that going head-to-head against a normal-looking bear is already bad enough, so you'll be pleased to know that while there are plenty of photoshopped images online, there's never been any official reports of two-headed bears anywhere. Well, maybe except on flags from the mutant-filled nuclear wasteland of the Fallout series. The same case of visually exciting ideas that very much only exist in Photoshop also applies to other big land animals like horses and rhinos. But the reason I'm showing you these creative imaginings is that there's a fascinating reason you don't see more two-headed mammals like this in real life. As it turns out, mammals are among the least likely animal groups to develop bicephaly, as, by contrast, groups like reptiles lay eggs. These eggs are exposed to the chaos of the environment, particularly inconsistencies in temperature, which can in turn lead to errors in the cell division process. This has meant that over the centuries, hundreds of two-headed snakes like Devil Dave the rattlesnake here from New Jersey have been found. In mammals, meanwhile, not only is the womb environment's temperature and chemical composition meticulously regulated by the mother's body, the mother's body also tends to automatically reject embryos that carry errors like this. This means fewer two-headed mammals are formed, and fewer still are able to make it to full-term birth. Even so, I can't help imagining how cool it'd be to ride into town on a two-headed horse. Maybe someday. While plenty of fakes exist online, this next very real two-headed reptile proves that reality can be stranger than fiction. Like some kind of video game boss in miniature, this two-headed shingleback skink was found in Victoria, Australia in 2016. While the splitting of the embryos occurred in an unusual manner here, given that the lizard essentially had two fully developed upper bodies and heads. The fused rear end meant moving around in a coordinated manner was pretty difficult. That being said, despite pulling in opposite directions much of the time, eating wasn't an issue when the strange pair stumbled upon prey, assuming they could agree on who got first bite. An even stranger-looking specimen was born in 2014, when ecologist Leon Blaustein was breeding fire salamanders in a university lab in Israel. One tadpole, subsequently called Arn and Sebastian, popped out looking a little different from the rest. As it developed, both heads were able to move, but apparently only one was seen eating, suggesting that they shared a stomach. Researchers have theorized that their defect may have been triggered by pollution, changes in radiation levels where the mother lived, or just plain old random mutations. In general, amphibians like the salamander are especially sensitive to changes in pollution levels because their porous skin and eggs can easily absorb chemicals from the environment. So while I'm obliged to condemn any attempt to replicate this bicephalic oddity by bathing your fire salamanders in Chernobyl pond water, I have to admit it would be pretty cool to have one of these as a pet. From awesome appearances right back to horror shows now, let's take a look at these conjoined twins found dead under a mango tree in the southeast of Brazil back in 2001. Being only the third conjoined twin bats ever reported in the world, you can probably imagine how the weight of an extra head and limited divided control over its wings made surviving, and generally doing bat stuff like flying, pretty impossible. X-rays of these male neotropical fruit bats revealed a 5.1-inch long body with spinal columns connected at the base, alongside two separate but similarly sized hearts and heads. All I can say, thank God Batman didn't get his outfit inspiration from this unfortunate creature. Now let's immediately cleanse our eyes and souls of those brow-raising bats with some adorable baby deer. They walk pretty funny with one head in the balance, so you can only imagine how they'd manage with two. However, these conjoined female white-tailed fawns found in a Minnesota forest in May 2016 sadly never lived long enough to test their legs out. An X-ray showed their necks were joined at the spine, and an MRI scan revealed that they only had one set of lungs, which had seemingly failed to function at birth. They also shared a liver, but were sweet enough to keep their two hearts to themselves, with one per half of the deer. Moving to the canine world now, a two-headed pet dog would be no easy task to care for. But if they looked like this golden good boy, I feel like it'd all be worth it. After all, that's twice the chins to scratch. However, this particular two-headed hound is merely an optical illusion. There are actually two separate pooches here. One's body is just hidden behind the other, but in a slightly horrifying twist, two-headed dogs have indeed existed. And not just through embryo anomalies. No, we actually created them. In the 1950s, a scientist called Vladimir Demikov made a full-bodied two-headed dog by, disturbingly, grafting two pooches together. Between 1954 and 1959, Demikov and his associates carried out countless experiments on dogs to help pave the way for human organ transplant research. By attaching a puppy's head and forelegs directly to the vascular system of a larger dog, Demikov created living, breathing Frankendogs. While the attached head couldn't eat in a traditional sense, as it wasn't wired up to a digestive tract, it was sustained by oxygenated blood from its host. Astoundingly, Demikov's most successful experiment lived for a month before the host's body rejected its freeloading roommate. While Demikov's experiments were hugely beneficial to medical science, even in Soviet Russia at the time, people condemned his deviled dog dabbling. So, scientists out there, now that we've proven this can be done, let's just leave the pooches alone, shall we? Would you pick any of these weird and wonderful two-headed creatures as a pet? Have you ever encountered any bicephalic beasts of your own? Let me know down in the comments below, and thanks for watching.